All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. We're not even finished with the first round of these NBA playoffs, and so far, the postseason has been a microcosm of the regular season as you simply don't know what to expect on a nightly basis. The Milwaukee Bucks, who have the NBA's best record during the regular season and were expected to make a run at winning the NBA championship for the second time in the last 3 years, are heading home courtesy of the Miami Heat, who vanquished them in 5 games. Milwaukee never had an answer for Jimmy Butler, who was the MVP of this series. Butler averaged more than 37 and a half points per game, which was highlighted by that 56-point outburst in game number 4. As, like I said before, the Bucks never had an answer for him throughout this series. Now, if you're Milwaukee, where did things go wrong for you in this series? In my opinion, first and foremost, I do believe that Milwaukee took Miami lightly and they paid for it. Butler and the Heat both are just simply built for the postseason. You look at Butler's numbers for the most part throughout his NBA career, his numbers have gone up in the playoffs. He knows how to take it up to another level. And, Jimmy Butler's has been one of those gritty guys that's going to do whatever it takes at each end of the floor. We saw it uh, through the first part of his NBA career with the Chicago Bulls, briefly with the Minnesota Timberwolves and Philadelphia 76ers. And I think the marriage between Butler and the Heat, it's a marriage made in basketball heaven because their styles mesh with each other. For me, you look at my Milwaukee, rather, like I said, I do believe that they took this team lightly. They figured that the Heat were coming in as the 8th seed. And, it's been an up and down year for the Heat. But then, they lost their first playing tournament game to the Atlanta Hawks. They were down against the Chicago Bulls before they turned it on in the fourth quarter. And I do believe that Miami has taken that momentum from that playing tournament game with the Chicago Bulls. It carried over to the series. They took advantage of Giannis going down in game number 1 with the back injury, and they just seized the momentum. We saw the Bucks shoot lights out in game number 2 versus the Miami Heat. Miami made the adjustments for game number 3. We saw Giannis come back, and in both games 4 and 5, Milwaukee had leads, but they could not close out Miami, especially in game number 5 at home. You had a 16-point lead heading into the fourth quarter. You couldn't seal the deal. A big part of that was Milwaukee's inability at the free throw line. The Bucks missed 17 free throws last night in game number 5, and they're going to rue that, especially Giannis, who had his struggles there, as a big reason why they're headed home. Milwaukee also failed to use their size advantage in this series. They have a clear edge in size on Miami, and Milwaukee, unfortunately for their sake, throughout this series, focused more on the perimeter aspect than their size aspect. And you go back to 2021 when the Bucks won it all. They were down 2-0 in the finals against the Phoenix Suns. And then finally, they decided to use their size advantage and play big man ball. They didn't do that in this series, and this is a big reason why they're going home right now. Giannis has to be better, but the team around him has to be better as well. As guys needed to step up. Even when Giannis was back, he still wasn't 100%, but guys around him needed to step up, and they did not do that throughout this series. Eric Spoelstra, the Heat head coach, just outcoached Mike Budenholzer, the Bucks head coach, throughout this series. Made better adjustments. Miami was better on the defensive end when they needed to be, and then of course Jimmy Butler was the star of stars throughout this series. This was a golden opportunity for Milwaukee, and it's gone by the wayside. We saw the Bucks win the championship in 2021. You can make a very compelling case that had Chris Middleton not gotten injured last year in the playoffs, that the Bucks would have gone back and won it all. And now, obviously, they've taken a huge step back. I say that from the standpoint that there is plenty of talent on this team. This is a championship team. But of course, championships, regardless of the sport, are not won on paper. Milwaukee has all of the talent on paper, but they have to execute and take care of their business, which they didn't. And because of that, that is a reason why they're going home. But at the end of the day, Milwaukee got punked by Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler just took their lunch money, and we saw this from Jimmy Butler in the Heat a couple of years ago in the playoff bubble against the Milwaukee Bucks, where he just punked them, and he went back to that recipe again. And guess what? The old adage is still true. You go out there, it was bully ball. He took their lunch money, and because of that, the Heat are moving on while the Bucks are going home. Now, of course, this changes things in the Eastern Conference because it was basically almost written in stone that you were going to expect the Bucks to take on either the Boston Celtics or the Philadelphia 76ers in the Eastern Conference Finals. Philly has obviously taken care of their business. They swept the Brooklyn Nets. We know that Joel Embiid has a knee injury right now. Obviously, with the Hawks extending that series, it's going to give Embiid more of an opportunity to rest. He's not going to be 100% when the Sixers take the floor for the conference semis. But the bottom line is give him more opportunity to rest if you are Philadelphia. Obviously, Boston could not close out Atlanta in game five a couple of nights ago. These two teams are set to tip it off in a couple of hours in the ATL for game number six. Will Trae Young force this thing to game seven? We got to wait and see. The Knicks took care of their business in the Eastern Conference first round against the Cleveland Cavaliers, and now they're set to clash with the Miami Heat. And obviously, if you're the Knicks, you cannot take the Heat lightly because aside from what we saw Jimmy Butler do, let's not forget this was a Miami Heat team that had the best record in the East last year. This was also a Miami Heat team that made the Eastern Conference Finals last year, and they were one Jimmy Butler shot away from getting to the NBA Finals. So you cannot take this team lightly, even though that they are an 8 seed. But obviously, things change right now, and things have changed with the Bucks going home, especially with Giannis's presence there. Things are definitely going to look a lot different in the conference semis and the conference finals now going forward. Now, of course, like I said at the beginning of this postseason, we could see some upsets, if you will, in the Western Conference. And I think it would only be upsets based on the seeds. But, again, like I said, for all four of the playoff series out west, for the most part, with the exception of Minnesota and Denver, if the lower seed were to beat the higher seed, not too many people would be surprised. You see the Golden State Warriors, a 6 seed. They currently have a 3-2 series lead on a 3 seed Sacramento Kings. And the same thing could be said for the 7 seed Los Angeles Lakers, who are up 3-2 on the 2 seed Memphis Grizzlies. Now, just like this year's NCAA tournament, these NBA playoffs are unpredictable as parity is here to stay. We didn't see one single NBA team win 60 games this past regular season. We saw the parity in the West as there really wasn't much of a gap between the fourth spot and the 10th spot in the West. So that gave you an idea of how even things are. Obviously, injuries had a factor in that, as well as late season trades. We saw the Lakers come on, and then, of course, the Phoenix Suns after they picked up Kevin Durant. So, with that said, you know what? This is the way it is. One number one seed is gone. There are people out there that don't expect or not picking the number one seed in the West, Denver, to get past the 4 seed Phoenix. I've got plenty more to say about that when I talk about the Western Conference semis. I'll be talking about that over the weekend. But nonetheless, this is the nature of the beast right now, as the Milwaukee Bucks found out the hard way. You got to take care of your business for 48 minutes, and in some cases, 53 minutes. Milwaukee wasn't able to do that. They realized too little too late that they had a battle tested Miami Heat team. And again, Jimmy Butler was the star of this series as Milwaukee found out the hard way. Championship aspirations, yes, for the Bucks, but at the end of the day, it's put up or shut up. They didn't put up, and they're going to go home and they're going to watch the rest of this postseason just like the rest of us, as it's down to pretty soon it's going to be 8 teams overall. We got about 11 right now, as I think off the top of my head, who still have an opportunity to take home the trophy. So if this was just a preview or a taste rather of what we saw in the first round as far as the rest of this postseason is going to turn out in the NBA, it is definitely going to be a dandy. So, folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take this time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you have not already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it'll be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. Now you can check it out. Drop a line to be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. So, once again, fine folks, my name is William Martin, and I'm signing off. And I'm saying take care and have yourselves a wonderful day.